Listening to Headspace on 103.2 Dublin City FM, the series looking at mental health in Ireland. We're still discussing obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. Jerry now talks to Gillian about her personal experience of OCD.
Well, then I could say to Gillian, it's really they're only thoughts. So when it happens to you, could you not just go out and do a 6-mile run, just to kind of stop that thought, or turn on the telly and watch 6 terribly stupid programs in a row, just to dull your brain and just get rid of that thought?
Well, I suppose, Jerry, in my experience, I suppose a prime example was I was getting a taxi into work yesterday morning, and we were talking about a well-known Dublin band, but we couldn't quite recall the name of the Dublin band, and it was really irritating. It was nagging away at your brain, and it was like as if you just couldn't actually perform or do anything until you found this name of the Dublin band. And in a way, that's how the, I suppose, intrusive thoughts would be in my experience. They're always there, and you might be able to put them on hold for a time temporarily. Yes, go for a jog, go for a run, but as soon as you actually sit down and go to relax, that's when your brain gets more activity. That's when it gets the opportunity to start thinking again, and the thought process just starts all over again. The same as if you forgot to get a bottle of milk in the shop. It's always there. It's always nagging in the back of your head. So like, you can do physical activity by all means, and obviously your body is going to be a lot more active, so your brain kind of goes into the background. There's not much thought process at the time because your body is doing all the activity. But as soon as you lie down, as soon as you sit down, as soon as you go to bed to rest, that's when your thoughts get the free rein, and that's when the intrusive thoughts are always there. They never go away, because it's like a worry. Like, take maybe a parent, for example, and they're concerned about their son going into nightclubs in the city centre. Like, my dad at home won't rest if my younger brother is going into city centre. You know, he'll be up and he'll be moving, he'll try and rest. But the worry is there, the concern is there. So, like, it's not just a thought, it's a concern for your well-being, because the thought seems to control, I suppose, the gauges where your well-being is. You know what your well-being is. Like, so when somebody suffers from OCD, you think, well, if I don't wash my hands, my well-being will be affected. I'll be threatened. I'll be victimized by something. So you have this concern for your well-being, and it's always in the back of your mind, no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is what makes a thought so difficult to deal with, and that's what makes it an obsession. Because an obsession is a sticky thought. It's a thought that you can't get rid of, and it's really sticky, and something with your experiences makes you vulnerable for that thought, while somebody else might be vulnerable for a thought about ordnance symmetry or something like that. And I do agree with you, taking a run or doing something physical to get rid of the thought is not going to help you, because that's what we call distraction, and it really is about just distracting you from the thought, but it actually doesn't work with the thought. And it means that, you know, the nature of thought is, if you say, well, if you tell a child, well, you need to give up your toffee, and you say, well, but the child wants its toffee, it's going to stick to it and it's not going to give it to you. It's the same thing with OCD. OCD is a bully, and it doesn't want to let go of you. So it's going to, the minute you distract yourself from the thought, the minute you relax, the minute you try and sleep, it's going to come back with a vengeance and say, well, you thought you could get away from me by going for a run or going for a swim. Well, actually, chum, I've got you, and I'm going to keep at you all the time. So we don't use those type of techniques to work with those thoughts. We work with different techniques, and we do, for example, doing something. Stop doing what you need to do. So stop washing hands or stop checking, to actually, what we call is to get rid of the emotion and to allow the emotion to go down. And sometimes starting with the work is very, very hard to start with it and to keep on with it, but that's actually what you need to do to get rid of that thought, because ultimately the thought will fade away. It's like a leaf falling from a tree, and it just falls onto the ground and it decays. And that's what needs to happen with an obsession.
Well, I found once I embraced thoughts, like a prime example would be, I work in an office environment, and obviously, you know, there's several people that use the toilet facilities, and avoidance is a major issue with OCD because, you know, rather than experience the thought and the anxiety around the thought and then rather go to the compulsion. So one example would be, I'm going to get contaminated if I touch a door handle. That's immediate the obsession. You're obsessed with touching door handles and the fear of getting contaminated. And then I suppose the compulsion would be to maybe wash your hands vigorously. Antibacterial soap, it always has to be antibacterial. It can be the cheapest antibacterial bottle of soap in Tesco or Superquinn, but once it has antibacterial on it, it's a signal there to your brain to say, I'm safe now, I'm grand now, my hands are clean. And I suppose avoidance would be a major issue, I suppose, in my own experience, where I would use things to open up the door handle. Like at home, my mother was sick of me using my foot. I used to freak out if somebody closed the door shut, because I'd always wanted left a little bit ajar so that I could actually use my foot, you know, to try and open up the door. And even like in the toilet facilities in the office, I'd use tissue paper, and I'd always make sure I'd have a good handful of tissue paper in my hand to open up the door. But I experienced one day that this was delaying me, because like I was getting into a lot of trouble in work. You know, they were noticing I was kind of disappearing and I was gone for quite some time, and nobody understands that, okay, this person could have OCD and that they're genuinely not, you know, dossing. They actually thought I was dossing. And I had to find some method, and it was very uncomfortable for me because, you know, I was so used to this enablement. The tissue was enabling me to open up the door. And I had to let go of the tissue one day. I just had to. It was very disturbing for me to do it, you know, very, very disturbing. And I went back to my desk and my brain was constantly telling me, oh, you're contaminated, you have to wash your hands. And I had to fight it. I had to actually fight the thought. Now, you know, lucky enough, I had my clinic to fall back on, my doctors to fall back on. I was taking medication at the time, and that kind of helped me. But I had to actually let go of that tissue. And you get a lot of hindrance. Like, you know, I one day I was actually in the toilet cubicle, and I clearly, you know, you're very, very perceptive as an OCD sufferer, especially when it comes to contamination. You hear everything, you're listening out for everything, you're watching everybody, you're scrutinising everybody. And I could hear this person coming into the cubicle beside me, and I could clearly, distinctly hear the toilet flush and the cubicle door open and straight out of the toilet. I nearly felt like running out myself, only I have a fear of contamination, and actually screaming at the person, would you ever just wash your hands? Because now you're feeding my OCD. I feel the need now to even be more clean because of you, you know. Yeah. And I still get those intrusive thoughts in my head to this day. Now, saying that, I've been about 6 months letting go of the tissue paper, and I still experience people coming in that they don't wash their hands, but I just have to kind of say to myself, you know, it is just a thought, but I have to do it in a very safe way and let go of the thought. But you still get the intrusion. You do still get the intrusion. You just have to avoid the temptation to feed into the compulsion, because the compulsion feeds it. It keeps it going.
Big time. And I know a lot of my clients talk about how real the obsession feels. And that's where a lot of confusion is at the beginning of therapy, because I feel like I run a torture chamber sometimes. I'm asking my clients to do exactly what you're talking about. And I love the contamination ones, because I sit in many a loo with the clients saying, okay, we're going to touch all these things and you can't wash. And they just look at me. Now, I always touch as well. So I show them it's okay. But that avoidance that people do, that avoiding of, you know, whatever activity, that prevents them from finding out that their worst fears are not going to come true. That avoidance is the biggest way to maintain stuff. But, you know, again, back to that, how real it feels. My clients are saying it feels so real, therefore it must be real. And we call it thought fusion. The thoughts are and the feelings are fused together. And sometimes the real work is with the person, just trying to get them to see it is just a thought. I know that feels real, but it isn't. And you're going to have to take a leap of faith. As I say to people, I'm essentially asking you to jump outside of a plane without a parachute, but I'm letting you know it's going to be okay. And it's huge. I mean, therapy is very difficult.